What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have a collection update. Not going to waste too much time with intros here because this is a pretty big one. Gone through a lot of music, so let's get into it. Eradicator Obscura. This is a thrash metal band from Birmingham, England. This came out on Dive Bomb Records / Tribunal, I guess, or maybe that was how it was distributed here. Pretty straightforward, kind of an 80s style thrash. Not particularly like very fast in your face like Slayer or anything like that. More kind of groovy and riff based. Very comparable to Megadeth. The vocalist kind of sounds a bit like Dave Mustaine, except not as tuneful. And he might not be the most tuneful singer. I still like him. Parts in here almost sound like Lane Staley, which is kind of odd for this. Music's pretty solid. It's a little bit closer to groove metal. The vocals were really hard for me to get into, and it doesn't open particularly strong. The first track really just doesn't grab you. There's some ones later that are pretty good. There was one that actually reminded me a lot of Gojira's Silvera, which the riff was really similar to it. I'm not saying they copied it, but it is really close. Most of my issues with this are the vocals. They're not particularly catchy or tuneful, and I don't know, they kind of grated on me after a while, since you pretty much hear everything this guy has to offer very early on in the album. Musically, it's okay. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're a fan of thrash and groove metal. But yeah, check it out. Murder Made God, Endless Return. This is a Greek brutal death metal band / tech death band. I really wouldn't say it was very brutal death in terms of, like, the vocals are actually really similar to David Vincent. Not the deep, gurgled vocals you'd expect from brutal death. Now, this has a lot of cool syncopated chugging. A lot of this stuff in here reminded me of earlier Decapitated. Not so much where they are now, but definitely those first 3 albums at least. Pretty solid stuff. I thought the production was okay on this. I felt like the guitars were pushed back in the mix just a touch, especially when I was jamming it in my car. The bass was very forward on this. But musically, this is pretty solid. I got to get some more by these guys. I've heard their other albums are really good as well. This is on Unique Leader and pretty much fits pretty much what they'd like to sign. And yeah, that's a pretty solid jam. I'd recommend checking it out. Good stuff. Urn Iron Will of Power. This is a black and thrash band from Finland. This came out on Season of Mist's Underground Activists label. And starts off really strong. Like, actually, everything I really like out of black and thrash metal. It really embodies both of those genres put together. Really awesome lead work on here. Fiercely melodic. Really shreddy and intricate. Now it takes a bit of a shift towards the end where it kind of moves almost into power metal / Viking metal territory. They kind of lose a little bit of steam in terms of the black and thrash stuff. Like, it starts off like R Noir and then kind of moves into almost Unleashed territory, and it kind of only gets okay from there. But there are some solid tracks on this that I really dug, and yeah, if you like black and thrash metal, I'd say at least give these guys a look. I'm going to look into some of their other albums as well, just because I liked a good chunk of what I heard on here. So yeah, check it out. Krieg Rise of the Imperial Hordes. See, this came out on Red Stream. I think it's probably a reissue. This is not good. I really like Krieg. I like their stuff that I have now, and where they are now is completely different than where they started here. This is very rough, very raw, but more on the it's poorly recorded side. Lots of cheesy synths and weird vocal shouts and yelps and such. The guitars are muddier than hell. You can't really make out a distinct riff. The drums sound like someone just beating an old mattress. This is pretty rough. There are some songs in here that I thought were pretty decent. Coronation, thought was a pretty decent song. Overall, I think they were really trying to capture the old Mayhem and Dark Throne sound, and even those sound much better produced than this, and those were done forever ago. Rough start for these guys, but they're definitely a lot different now. I recommend checking out their more recent releases. This one's pretty much for collectors only. I saw it for a decent price in a used bin. Fuck it, why not get it? Anyway, check it out. Witch King, Voice of the Ossuary. This is a blackened death metal band out of Rhode Island. This is out on Blood Harvest and distributed through Regain Records. This one, unfortunately, also has really rough recording. It's very compressed. The guitars are super, super muddy on this, and it's not like the good kind of gritty you look for in like kind of an old school death metal sound. It's just kind of a bad recording. Musically, it favors more of the death metal side. There's some blackened elements on here, but I think it'd almost be fair to just call them a death metal band. Actually, I would even say some of the songs favor brutal death in terms of just the high speed and the very brutal nature of it. It's very chuggy. Again, it's hard to make out a lot of distinct moments in this muddy mix, but there are some good songs buried in the mud. Namely the title track. I thought that one was particularly catchy. Definitely willing to check out more by these guys. Hopefully these guys maybe get a chance to remaster this, because I think remastered it might actually sound a lot better and actually give these songs room to breathe. But yeah, just check it out. Judge for yourself. Okay, I know the title of this band is Beast in Danish, but I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so I'm just going to say Baest. This is their new album, Venenum, and this is their second full length, and these guys are pure bloodbath worship, which I fucking love bloodbath. So that's already a really cool thing. Now, this album, I think, is an improvement from their first album, which I really enjoyed as well. There's more melody in this one, and they seem like they took a page out of old school death, like circa first 3 albums. Lots of cool guitar harmonies that just instantly reminded me of the stuff that Chuck would write. But they do not leave that bloodbath aspect behind in the least in all of this. It is heavy. You get that straight HM2 guitar tone that's just nasty as hell. Love the song Gula. That is one of the chuggiest, nastiest songs I've heard in this vein in a while. It is pretty much just open chord chugging with some dissonant riffs, but somehow they make it really work into this epic giant song. Strongly recommend this one, especially if you're a fan of Bloodbath. You'd probably love it. Check it out. Creeping Death, Wretched Illusions. This is out on E1, but if I didn't know any better, I thought it would be out on 20 Buck Spin. This sounds like exactly the sort of thing 20 Buck Spin would sign. Starts off super similar to Gatecreeper. Like very groovy, very heavy riffs. The guitar tone may not be on the HM2 side, but it's closer to like a really heavy Obituary tone, which they're already really heavy anyway. Now, it started off in that more groovy area, and then all of a sudden starts taking an abrupt shift and starts including thrash on here, right around Bloodlust Contamination, which I think is a super fucking standout on this one. It goes full tilt thrashy death metal on this one, and I love the fact that it sounded very much like Power Trip, which is another band I currently fucking love, and I can't wait to hear new shit from them. And I like the fact that they bring in hardcore elements, but it doesn't come off as deathcore at all. It's just still groovy old school death metal with straight up hardcore breakdowns like, you know, Obituary covering a Hatebreed song. Really dig this album. Strongly recommend it. It's a lot of fun to listen to. Check it out. Darkend, Spiritual Resonance. So this came out on Dark Essence Records. This is, I guess we would say, symphonic black metal. It's very melodic too. These guys are from Italy, and from the beginning of it, it really sounded like they were going for a sound much like, you know, Dimmu Borgir or Dark Fortress or even Belphegor. But it also takes a shift more towards gothic. I think the keys kind of overpower this, and they kind of get lost in the symphonic elements versus, you know, just bringing forward good, solid black metal riffs and, you know, really getting into that. Sometimes the symphonic elements don't mix well with the guitars, and there's some almost kind of off-putting melodies in there that just kind of drove me nuts and really took me out of it. There's a lot of weird gasping vocals on here, and some odd choices for gang vocals in this. They kind of come off a little bit cringy to me. There's some really solid music on here, but I think it just kind of got weighed down by being maybe too lavish or, you know, just kind of trying to be over the top here. But yeah, if you like symphonic black metal, check them out. Tell me what you think. You know, I thought it was okay. Not a bad listen, though. I think it's pronounced the Hu, but it might be the Who. This is their new album, Gereg. This is a Mongolian folk band that has some metal elements, too. I have to admit, I was possibly a little misled in the fact that it was branded to be more of a metal project, but it really isn't. It really focuses primarily on the folky aspects. But it's really interesting. This came out on 11/7 Music, and I got into it. It's really interesting. There are songs in here that really caught my ear. I like the incorporation of the Mongolian throat singing and the bows. It's really interesting, but unfortunately, the gimmick doesn't last for an entire album, and that's what kind of took me out of it. Was after a while, the songs started kind of blending together, and they weren't very interesting. There are some that are real standouts, but there's a lot that just feel like they kind of retreaded that idea in a different song. I think the vocals are probably the most interesting thing on here for me. I thought it was just kind of interesting how they incorporated all that. It's always cool seeing people bring their own culture into music, into more popular music like metal, I guess. And yeah, it's an interesting listen. I wouldn't call it metal necessarily, but definitely check it out. It's an interesting listen. Monolord No Comfort. This is Monolord's Relapse debut. These guys are a Swedish stoner / doom metal band. Very slow, chuggy. Actually reminds me a lot of Sleep. Vocally, it's okay. Kind of thin vocals, I guess. Like, they're not really the most prominent thing on here, but the guitar and bass tone on here is so massively heavy. And I really like their incorporation of really melodic leads. There's even some very Pink Floyd-like atmospheric moments on here. I really dug this. This is a solid album, and I actually went out and got all their other stuff because this is my first exposure to them. I've heard a lot of people bring them up. I just kind of put them on the back burner for bands I'd check out, and so glad I got this because this is a killer listen. Definitely check this out. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Year of the Goat, Novus Orbis Terrarum. This is a kind of gothic rock / stoner doom rock band from Sweden. It's on Napalm Records. It's an interesting listen. It definitely reminded me a lot musically of bands like The Devil's Blood or even Graveyard. Not the death metal Graveyard, but the Swedish kind of retro rock band. Musically, I think it's really good. There's a lot of catchy riffs in here, a lot of hooks. Vocals are way over the top on this. Like, they just sound kind of hokey on this. And it really drove me nuts because these songs, maybe with just a little bit less is more approach on the vocals, I think really could have hit home. The song Ira I actually really got into because the vocals were in a little bit lower register. That one was a really well-constructed song. I think it's one of the longest ones on here too, and I really just kind of got into how this one was really composed. Kind of reminded me a lot of Alice Cooper in a way. But again, on the other tracks, the vocals kind of took me out of it. But still, I recommend checking them out. It's kind of a fun listen. And if you're just into like 70s rock and such, yeah, you might dig it. Check it out. Anacrusis, Suffering Hour. This is the reissue of Anacrusis' first album. This is back when they were more of a straightforward thrash band before they got into being more of a progressive thrash band. Now, I guess these guys have recently reunited, and I guess they're celebrating this reunion by reissuing all their albums on Metal Blade, and this is the first one to come out. And it is a solid remaster. It's really good. This is a really, really awesome listen. I love just how ferocious and technical this brand of thrash is. Like, it really reminds me a lot of Coroner, which I fucking love Coroner. It's pretty cool that you can still hear hints of the more progressive moments on here as they were slowly evolving into that. And I really liked every song on here. This even includes a cover of NIB, which was so-so, and then some early demos too that you get to check out. So yeah, this is the roots of a really cool underground thrash band. Definitely check it out, and like I said, look out for those reissues that are coming out. Dysrhythmia, Terminal Threshold. I wasn't even aware these guys were still around. I used to listen to Dysrhythmia back in the early to mid 2000s when they were still on Relapse, and this is now on Translation Loss, and I was just kind of baffled by how strange this music was. They're an all instrumental band, kind of a jazzy thrash prog hybrid. There's a lot of fusion moments in here that's really cool. This is just really interesting metal. Like, it kind of reminds me of a more off-kilter version of a band like Scale the Summit. Definitely for fans of like maybe Dillinger Escape Plan meets Cynic. Really awesome songs on this. Solid production. The bass work on here is fantastic, and it's really kind of forward in the mix so you can really hear it. Really dig this. This is really good stuff. If you like instrumental, experimental metal, definitely check these guys out. It's a solid listen. And finally we have Gost Valediction. This is out on Century Media, and I don't know if I consider this necessarily metal as a whole. This is a dark synthwave project that incorporates bits of, I'd say, black metal in here. But I have to be honest, the metal parts are probably the most unnecessary parts in here for this album to be good, because I really like dark synth music. You know, grew up on Depeche Mode and Human League and stuff like that, being a kid in the 80s, and this really echoes that. Some stuff in here that remind me of like Duran Duran or even Skinny Puppy. Really, really good stuff. And honestly, they're at their best when they are taking the metal aspects and pushing them back and favoring the more straightforward synth stuff. I think they wrote really catchy songs that sound like they were in a time capsule from the 80s. Really, really dig this. This is really cool. It's kind of an interesting signing for Century Media. It really doesn't seem like the kind of band they would sign. But yeah, it's kind of odd that the least metal moments on here are the moments I like the most, but I'd still recommend checking out, especially if you're into synth music. And if you like black metal, there might be enough on here to whet your palate. Either way, check it out. Interesting listen. Alright, that does it for another collection update. Gonna get back to listening to more new releases, gonna have some more album reviews coming, live show reviews. So, yeah, stay tuned to the channel. We got more stuff coming. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you guys later.